So, what's our questions today, boys? What are we curious about
Oh
going on
man.
in the world
Do
today?
do you guys know what we do with foreskin after we circumcise a
I think
baby?
that actually goes into the right?
Yeah, type shit. It's what I heard today was that the skin that they use from like circumcising like boys is of course boys, but they use it for like beauty products and like all these like rich people like buy this shit. It's like $600 for like some cream and they
Ah,
like put it in these shots. They also can get injected in your face. Like they're
that's
like
some priest shit
cells,
right there.
cells
Catholic
from
priest right there.
yeah, it's like cells from the foreskin, which is crazy. I don't know. I just thought that was insane what I heard today.
Well, see, that's quite the claim. We got receipts for that. You know what I'm saying?
Of course, Miss Candace Owens.
Candace
Miss,
Owens said it.
wait,
Oh, it's
Candace
gotta be
Owens was
truth.
talking about that shit.
Yeah, I'm telling you
Let's
on that
go.
shot in the dark on the shot in the dark
Oh,
series,
oh.
and you know she
Well
researches her
then.
shit.
Well that's fun. Yikes.
Yep.
I wonder. I wonder what the purpose behind that is. Does it really make the products good? You know, or like
It's
what's
I
the
mean
desire to do that?
it's like you hear the theory about people in Hollywood drinking baby's blood to keep them looking young. It's like the same thing.
And
So
they believe they have reason to believe that that shit is making them.
I mean, why do you think they're 40 years old, 50 years old, and they look like they're fucking 20, 30? I mean,
That's
that's
why
what
we
they're
need to
doing.
stop funding science. Like, what has been all the scientific developments of the past decade? We've got fetuses in vaccines, we've got foreskin in beauty products, and we've got 19.
Yeah.
I don't know, bro. It's
And
just
man, the proof behind USA sending money to the doctor who was patient zero in the lab in Wuhan.
hmm
So that, I mean, that's proof that USAID funded the development of COVID-19 is nuts.
Why do you think? Why do you think Anthony Fauci was pardoned? He can't get in trouble. He can't get sued. He can't do anything. Why do you think you can't sue these companies? They know what the fuck's in these scenes, but I mean,
That companies having immunity is definitely something that I think a lot
it's a
of people
red
don't
flag.
know is a thing. And
I mean, the shit I heard today, listening about like the Hep B vaccine was it's just insane. Toxic metals and it's. I mean, you can only contract HB by dirty needles and sex. Is my newborn gonna be having sex or living in a crack house? No. What the fuck do I need to fully vaccinate him with that? I don't know. It's just it
that is
grosses
true.
me
The
out.
problem with the whole, yeah, with that whole argument is like, okay, but we live in a world where, you know, these filthy conditions don't exist anymore.
Yeah.
You know, these things did at times in history like bring down, what, how do you say it, bring down the mortality rate. They made humans live longer, especially right after being born. But that was because, yeah, there was like shit all in the streets everywhere, and I mean it was like not like it was
Literally.
actually knee deep, but for lack of
Yeah.
a better phrase, it was knee deep. And so I mean that, you know, especially back then, like, you know, people used to not bathe and stuff. Like, people didn't realize, like, you know, they had all these. This was before they used to shock the water with chlorine, which is what they do in
hmm
all modern public cities and stuff. Like, if you live in a neighborhood of any kind, if you have public water, then your water is shocked with a ton of chlorine, and there's a bunch of chlorine in your current water, and that is what prevents our city water and stuff, our tap water, from getting us really, really sick, like it would in Mexico if you were to drink tap water in Mexico. They don't have the kind of cleaning systems that we do, and they damn sure don't shock their water with chlorine. So.
For India.
But we do need to not say the V word anymore. We gotta stop talking about vaccines
Oh
because
yeah, yeah, yeah.
YouTube's gonna take this. I'm gonna have to bleep every time we say the V word, and yeah, YouTube's gonna
Yeah, we can move
fucking
on.
get so mad at us. So we gotta change topics on that one. Let's talk about tariffs. What do we know about the tariffs today?
Ooh.
Dude, this is my thing about them is Chuck Schumer and Nancy Pelosi, who are both senators who freaking hate the MAGA movement and they hate Trump and they constantly talk shit about Trump, and they right now are like, you know, some of the main people saying the economy's in the shitter because of Trump and yada yada. Yet they were the ones back in the 1980s and 1990s saying exactly what Trump is saying, which is we get, you know, absolutely decimated in trade by the likes of China and everybody else, which is really easy to look up yourself and like and verify. Like, I mean, that is absolutely true. And you know, these two senators who hate Trump like a motherfucker are out here yelling and screaming, you know, decades ago about the very things that Trump is now finally implementing. You know, like how many years has the government and the Democrats had to fix our trade problems that they've been yelling about for decades? And now that something is being done about it, apparently they're mad. It makes absolutely no sense.
Yeah, I mean, my whole thing on it is people are hyping it up, and it's just making it worse. Like, you saw the whole, like, Trump talked about potentially rescinding the trade, and then all of a sudden you see this stock market shoot back up a couple %, and then he goes, actually, never mind, I'm gonna keep it going or whatever.
That's not even what happened. It
Like,
was a rumor that was unconfirmed. But yes, you're right.
Yeah, that whole thing. Like, you can see how so much of this is just emotions and just people forecasting. So, like, you're playing into it. Like, this is a self-fulfilling prophecy that's going on to some degree. I'm not saying that tariffs aren't going to immediately cause these drops in stock markets and stuff and these index funds, but like so much of it is just everybody freaking out.
Yeah, because it's so emotion fueled. Yeah, I mean, no, that is a great point though. Like, so a rumor, and dude, I bet you it was just, see, this is the thing, is I bet you it was somebody up in DC, somebody somewhere made some shit up and quote unquote leaked it to the press. Like, is it a leak if it's a fucking lie? You know what I'm saying? And just to make Trump look bad, probably was like, oh, he's considering pausing the tariffs. And so then that gets leaked to the press. The press run with it for even a quick second. And I'm not even sure the press did. It was just, I mean, I saw somebody post it on X, which that sometimes that can be just as bad. And yeah, I mean, that is what it did. Is it caused this uptrend that happened. The market started to have a positive boost in the day. And then, yeah, and then the White House denies it and is like, no, that's not true. That's not what we're doing. And actually, Trump later came out, I think at that same day, in like a press conference in the White House, was like, no, we're not backing down. We're not doing any of that. Like, we're keeping it. And in fact, I'm going to raise the tariffs. I'm not going to pause them. I'm going to make them even more. And then the market continued to go down. So, I mean, your point is absolutely accurate, where it's like, because people are just tripping so hard. Can you ready up for us? You know, then it just makes it worse because people, well, they just don't know how any of this works. They don't know what's going on. And then, yeah, then their emotions get fueled, and then the market tanks for more than it needs to.
Yep.
Oh no, my 401k is down.
And that's accurate.
Shit's
like,
crazy.
you know, people's 401ks are down.
Shit's crazy.
And there are people, especially if you're 85, 90 years old right now, and you're living on retirement, and if I'm not exactly sure how all of it works, but if the market being down is affecting the amount of money you get every month, then sure, I understand why you're a little heated. But like, can you have a little sympathy for the fact that you're 85, 90 years old, you're not going to be here much longer, and there are people who are going to be living here a long time who would like inflation to stop being 20% a year. And a lot of that is happening because of our trade deficit and of all this money we're sending to all these countries. And if we're going to keep sending money to Ukraine and Israel, which we are kind of somewhat doing depending on who you ask, we could at least be tariffing them when they have the fucking gall to tariff us on everything we fucking buy from them. And, you know, this is how we begin to fix our economy. And, of course, it's going to make things go down for a little bit. It's a necessary hazard.
We have to crash the market to rebuild it, basically.
We don't
Like
have to,
it-
I
like
don't
the
know.
market
The idea
needs to
isn't
crash.
necessarily to crash the market. The idea is to
Yeah.
rebuild how we do business, to restructure it. So, yeah, that is an effect of doing it, but it's not like our goal is to intentionally take stock prices so that the middle class can afford them and then shoot them back up. Like, no, the idea is to bring manufacturing back into America so that we can start, you know, profiting off of this. Like, you
And the stock
just
market
end up
not doing
having
well
more.
is a byproduct of that.
Yeah.
Do we make any cars in America?
Yeah.
Any
Dodge.
cars?
Well, do we manufacture
Like,
them is a
Tesla.
different question.
Yeah. Manufacturing.
Small parts,
Tesla.
mostly no.
Tesla has a lot of manufacturing here.
So most of the cars are made overseas.
Even like Ford is doing
Shipped
like
over here.
overseas parts. Oh wow, he broke roll one.
So we build
Crazy.
cars over on like other places, and then we bring them over to America.
Yeah, or we'll just import the raw goods. So like, I don't know, like a door, you know. We'll just
Yeah.
assemble it all in house, but
Yeah,
like
or
even
like,
Ford, like one of the most American companies, like that's what they do.
yeah. And like sometimes, like when I lived in the central part of Texas, in the Austin, San Marcos area, a lot of the times on the trains, like the trains that would run through the middle of towns, they would have like car chassis. So like the metal frames of cars um, would be the majority of what made up these supply trains that would take for fucking ever to go through town. And I mean, I don't want to over exaggerate, but seriously, there were so many. I mean, it was like 2 miles of train of nothing but car chassis. And I think, for example, like they could be coming from Mexico, where it's much easier to produce the car chassis, and then those chassis get delivered to the manufacturing plant here in America, where like, okay, the assembly is happening in America, but like there's this massive part of the supply chain that's happening in Mexico, which could be happening here, but because of the way the economy works, especially here domestically, you know, we're making them in Mexico, and Mexico benefits from that, not us. I got.
So let's put it in like beer terms, you know. So Corona is made in Mexico, right?
Right.
And so can you kind of like make it in like beer terms?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
So we
Let's
take
dumb
the
it down.
kegs. Budweiser takes the kegs from Scotland and we pour them into bottles and we sell the bottles.
Oh, okay, makes sense. That's crazy. But we get taxed, like it gets taxed like on the way over here.
Well, so
Yeah,
think-
well,
think
now
of this.
it
So
will.
the company that is in Mexico, so even if it's an American company, even if it's Dodge, and they have a manufacturing plant that, or whatever it is that makes the car chassis, let's say that exists in Mexico. They have to pay taxes to Mexico for existing there, not America. So that's money that's not going to the American bank account. And that's money that can't be spent on social programs. That's money that can't go to schools. That's money that can't go to construction projects and rebuilding things such as the Baltimore Bridge that federal funding could go to. Like, the more companies that cease to exist in America is the less tax revenue that's going to America. And you know what? While I'm fucking on it, you know, people want to talk about let's tax the rich. Bro, let's get the rich back in our fucking country. We don't need to tax the rich. We need to relocate the rich. Because they're all in China and Mexico and other places that aren't here. And that's why our fucking jobs don't exist here, is because they're elsewhere.
Puerto Rico? Yeah,
I'm up.
that's crazy.
Past the middle here off the backboard, maybe? Right in our goal, actually. Yeah, thank you. Yeah.
Yep.
No, actually, that's a
Minute
fitting
left.
example of our economy. You see how I just scored on us? This is what we're doing, right? I'm making it
We're just
really
shitting on
hard for you
ourselves.
to protect your own fucking home by letting in millions of illegals and bending you the fuck over the economic trade counter. That's how you get scored on, and that's why you're losing this game 3-2 right now.
Our tax dollars going to giving them phones and places to live and food stamps. It's crazy.
You know?
And the
But
right
there-
to vote.
Like, Ethan, like, it should be more expensive to buy Corona, Modelo, Dos Equis in any form, bottles, cans, keg, any form. It should be more expensive to buy that than 90% of microbrews that exist in all of America. If I live in goddamn Texas, it should be easier to buy, you know, Shiner, definitely.
Shiner, yeah.
Big time.
Yeah.
Shiner. And it shouldn't even be close. I mean, it should be like, per six-pack, it should be $2 cheaper to buy Shiner than any goddamn foreign beer. I don't care where the fuck it came from. Like, if that is not the case, then we are just shooting our own citizens in the foot economically every fucking day.
Yeah.
And there are certain exemptions to it when you talk about like natural resources that USA just doesn't have access to. You know, where it makes sense to have some sort of specialization. Like, let's think of one example. Maybe like the like sheep, like wool. You know, like we can,
Yeah.
but there's a lot of other countries that have been doing it better for longer, like Scotland and shit. Where it's like, all right, there's some specialization there.
Mm.
They have access to the resources. It makes sense to keep it over there because it would be more costly for us to do it here.
That's why most shit
to
says
that point,
made in
like,
China.
Yeah, and that like I like that phrase, like access to the resources, right? Well, what could be another example of that at a massive scale? Could we say access to the U.S. economy? Right? Is the U.S. economy in itself a resource? You fucking better believe it is. And having access to it should be a privilege, not a right. You know what I'm saying? Like, we are
Yeah.
the land of the free and the home of the brave, but only if we fucking keep it that way. Like, when you pull up on a nice neighborhood who's got their shit together, is there no walls around that bitch, or is it a gated community? Like, that we need to be a gated community, and we need to, like, make it possible for people to come here. It's right now it's currently super impossible for people to come here legally. And then the ways that people do come here legally are super fucking corrupt. H-1B visa, looking at you. But, you know, assuming we can fix all of that too, this needs to be a gated community where it is a privilege to have access to our community, our economy, and you need to pay, bro. You need to pay to play. It's that simple.
The way that we should be looking at immigration in general is the same way a business looks at it. So like M&A, you have mergers and you have acquisitions. You can't just acquire. You have to make sure you merge. So when they come in, we have a way to not only, you know, grant them citizenship, but in the process they merge into our culture and they adhere to some of our values, because then we just start importing the third world and we become the third world. Like, we have to make sure that we assimilate them.
So
we
for
have
people
some
who
sort
would
of
say like you're making them like get rid of their own culture to do that. What's your argument?
there's a difference between to what degree. So that we should be talking about like Constitution, Declaration of Independence, American history. Obviously, we're not going to be infringing on any, you know, like extreme example would be like a religion, right? But what we are going to say is that if your religion goes against, say, the Constitution and certain rights that we have given to other people, then you don't get to practice that.
You don't get to practice the
Like,
religion, or you don't get to practice that specific thing.
You don't get to practice that specific part of the religion.
Yeah.
So if your religion says, hey, as a part of my religion, I need to kidnap babies, guess what? You don't get to
Yeah.
claim freedom of religion, right?
Yeah.
So obviously that's an extreme example. There's going to be a lot more middle ground, like, for example, when it gets into our schools. But
No, I think that's fair. Like, yeah, I mean, if it breaks the law, I mean, I think that's as simple as like, if it breaks the law, then, you know, and I think there's other examples where people get like certain exemptions from certain laws, but especially
Yeah.
things that negatively affect other people, right? I mean, that's like just a common sense blanket argument for a lot of things. This is like the question that we need to be asking is, and I'm going to get back to your point about it being like a business. But a main borderline blanket question we need to be asking in a lot of these policies is what's going on right now, is it negatively affecting other people? Right? And if the answer is yes, then we really need to consider doing away with this, regardless of how empathetic we're trying to be towards someone's situation in life. Like, we need to stop hurting other people so that we can quote unquote uplift a few minorities. Like, we're not uplifting shit. We're just hurting our own citizens. But back to the business thing. So I think there's a lot of people that would say government doesn't need to be run like a business. What do you say against that?
Well, all right. Before that, let me give a different example of the M&A. That's merger and acquisition part. That example that I gave that makes more sense. We don't have people. We don't have any sort of whenever we have like citizenship tests, or whenever they immigrate in, they don't have to learn our language. Like, there's certain linguistics exams that you have to pass for pretty much every other country. And maybe I'm wrong. Maybe we could fact check that. But there's no way that we have anywhere near other countries. We have people that are coming in from, I don't know, for example, from my company, there's a lot of Haitian people coming in the southeast section. They don't even speak our language at all. And it makes it really difficult to bring them into society and build them up. Like, there should be some sort of base test that they have to pass.
I do think there's a I mean, I agree with the suggestion, or like, you know, that they need to speak a certain level of English to be given citizenship, and I think that should be true for a lot of visas. Maybe not all of them, but I would care to guess that it's probably a good idea for the majority of any legal status here in the United States. It would be a good thing for that to require a certain level of ability to speak English.
Yeah, like
And
in
if you work
Germany,
in
for
customer
example-
service,
Yeah.
Jesus.
Well, yeah, I mean, you just can't get the job there. But if you like in Germany, for instance, they have it ranked out to like 5 different sections of fluidity of how well you speak German, and you have to be able to test up to like, let's say for this argument, level 3 before you can get your citizenship, or before you can get a passport and a visa and all these things. So
Yeah, we
having
need
something
that.
like that, I think would help. But your original question was not even directly related to that. I just kind of skirted around that, didn't I?
I don't know. What was
You
my
said-
original question?
Oh, that
The
people
government
shouldn't.
being ran
The
as
government
a
shouldn't.
business.
Oh
Yeah.
yeah. So well, you and I were talking offline earlier today, and you had a really good point about it. So what's the argument when you say like government shouldn't be ran as a business? What would be your argument for that?
Because businesses, like, government is a business. It's the largest business that affects every single business in the entire country. There's no reason that it shouldn't be treated like a business, because it is indirectly a business.
And directly.
And directly, yes.
Metaphorically,
Like, we're-
practically, literally, in every sense it is. I mean, there's parts of government that I think could be argued that maybe are not business, but there's so much that is. You know, why would we ever not look at it as such? Especially the parts that are.
Yeah.
Right? And as
But-
we learn, like, go ahead, Len.
But with that becomes a lot of accountability and things that people don't want to have into the government. So they're trying to avoid it and say that, oh, we shouldn't be treating it like that because we know what's going to happen if it does. All of these government programs that we think are, social works that we've been fighting for because we believe in helping people and we need to have more resources to these people, all of a sudden become a lot less justifiable, because why would we need that?
I agree. Equilibrium.
I think, and I think certain things like, that's a good play we just had. The different levels of how well you comprehend German and speak German. Like, I think here in America, a lot of people would argue that like if we were to try to do that here, that they would argue that that's racist, right? Or it's
Not fair.
unfair to minority groups and stuff like that. And it's like, that's so dumb, because it's not about that. It's actually about the quality of life of both them, the immigrant, and the people living here. And because if we can't communicate, right, then it really makes life hard. And all of us can relate to calling customer service and someone who is very much not American answers, and they,
Can't understand what they're saying.
I've talked to a lot of people on customer service lines who, let's everybody leave, who speak actually like probably every word in the English language, but the problem is their accent is so thick. I just cannot understand what they're saying. Like, they say words so strangely that to me they're not saying English words, and I keep asking them to repeat it, and they never say it any different. They never say it any slower. Like, that, you know what I'm saying? They seem to not care at all that I can't understand them. And in fact, they seem to be irritated by the fact that I can't understand them. And it's like, well, you know what, dude? You don't need to work this job if you're irritated by the fact that you don't speak English that well, or with a fucking accent that I can understand. Like, I'm not entirely bilingual, but I speak a lot of Spanish compared to the average white person. And if I was to do it in like a really thick German accent, not that like is not that I could or ever do that, but if I was able to do that, if I was from Germany and I spoke Spanish in an extremely thick German accent, so thick that like the words don't even sound like Spanish words, like, those people are gonna have a hard time understanding me. And you put that over the phone, where phone quality isn't very good all the time, right? And in fact, like, the way that I because I'm an audio engineer, I can tell you very plainly that the audio quality of any phone conversation is much less than, like, it's much harder to understand people over the phone than it is to understand them face to face and in any other medium. The phone is specifically, because of the way the phone lines work, the audio quality is throttled down on purpose. Like, they suppress the phone quality on purpose so that you don't have as many like glitches and clicks and pops in your phone conversation. So when you have people with extremely thick accents, it makes understanding them incredibly hard. Even if they do speak every single word, it's about the accent. Anyway, that was a really long, specific rant. But we've all experienced that, and it's like it's about quality of life. Like, it's not about being fucking racist and preventing people from living and working here. It's not about that. It's about making sure that when they do get here, that everyone remains happy. And you can't do that if we're quite literally not speaking the same language. I'm dead.
Yeah, there's certain things like language and values and morals that we should have. We already have universally built our country off of. So why aren't we imposing that onto people that come over to our country? Because guess what? That's why they're coming over here in the first place. They like all the benefits. So you're gonna abide by our rules and you're gonna learn them before you become a citizen. So it's just and have the right to vote. We want to make sure that you're not gonna come in and vote for dictators, right? Like we don't want to just bring in a bunch of third world countries that believe dictatorship is okay and then be surprised that we have dictators. Now obviously out of context people will say that's exactly what we have right now, and to that I'll say fuck you.
Well, go ahead, Ethan.
If we're gonna have a dictator, I'd rather it be him.
Well, I think the argument against do we have a dictator in office right now is, look, it's a really simple argument. Like, it really gets dismantled really fast when you go, okay, who decided that Kamala Harris was going to be the new candidate for the presidential race whenever Joe Biden stepped down? Who decided that? Did you guys have a primary for that? The answer is no, you didn't. She got placed there, and that's anti-democratic as fuck. That's super anti-democratic. You want to talk about a threat to democracy? That off-rip means Kamala is a threat to democracy. Now, you want to look at how Trump won the election. He won all 7 swing states. And, it gets really, really hilarious to watch anybody say, no, he didn't. It's like, really? Are you an election denier all of a sudden? Is that what you're doing? Is that really what you're doing? Given what happened in 2020, you're going to sit there and deny the election, right? That's crazy. So their argument completely falls apart to say that Trump is a dictator. No, he's fucking not. He got put in place, and I don't know where all these people, well, actually I do know where they were. They definitely weren't on Twitter because for months and for years, like as soon as Elon got involved in politics and as soon as the conversation about Doge happened, everybody on X was like, oh, dude, did you see what Elon did to Twitter? He fired 80% of the staff, and Twitter got more profitable and more efficient than it's ever been. What if he did that to the government? I mean, we've been talking about it for fucking months before Trump got elected. And then he starts doing it, and everybody's fucking shocked. It was crazy. I couldn't believe it. I'm like, no, dude, like, we all voted for this. All of us voted for this.
We the people.
Yeah.
He won fair and square, though. I mean, fuck.
So here's another dictatorship level argument that I've heard. With all the shit of him going around the courts. What do we do about the courts? Like this whole checks and balances thing, I feel like we're at like this climax of like there has to be a decision made, because while I can sit here and oh wait, can you even hear me?
Yeah, we can.
Yeah.
Oh, okay, I just got DC. That was weird. Because while we can, oh man, whole train of thought. Because yeah, while we can sit here and just say like, oh yeah, Trump should have the executive authority. To what degree? Because obviously they should, all the judges should have their equal say, right? That we can't just ignore the judiciary branch. And if the roles were reversed, if we had a Democratic president saying, hey, I'm going to write an executive order that trans people should be able to participate in sports.
Boo.
And we had a Republican state that was outright defying it and saying, you know what, no, we're not going to let them. I would be jumping up and down saying, yeah, you go state. But now all of a sudden, because the roles were reversed, now we have, what was it, New Hampshire or something, wherever that northeastern state was, doing the opposite. Now I'm sitting here calling for, like, okay, you have to listen to the president. There's sort of like that partisan bias that gets into it. So it's like, how do you put the bias aside when setting up,
like Rhode Island? It was like Rhode Island or Maine, and he was like, all right, I'll see you in court. I was like, I'll see you in court. That'll be an easy one to win,
So what exactly are we talking about? Are we talking about that, what Dallas just said, or are we talking about things like when a court blocks him and he's like, fuck you, I'm gonna do it anyway? Like, what situation are we talking about?
I guess either or, because I'm looking at it with a step back, not in that specific scenario, I guess. So
okay,
looking at like, okay,
the problem.
the court says, I believe that this is the way we should approach this issue. The president says no.
Well,
I think it's the other way. So how do you decide who gets when none of it is explicitly written in the Constitution?
yeah. So, I mean, I don't think there's any good answer to the question you just asked. What I'll say is, you know, when you realize just how corrupt things are, and when you realize just how confused some people are, right? Because it's a mix. It's corruption and it's people are brainwashed, and they think that transgender men need to be in women's sports, right? Like beating up on women and like causing them to have permanent fucking medical problems because of it, which is self-evidently wrong, right? Like we can't be having that. And I'm not saying that's what judges are advocating for. I'm just saying some of their opinions are incredibly stupid. And so here's the thing is, when you have them, I mean, they're advocating and ruling for things that are unconstitutional a lot of the time. When Trump is over here trying to, like, I mean, there's a few things that I don't like, and we can talk about that, but like the majority of things that he's getting in trouble with the judicial branch of our government with, the judicial branch is in the wrong. They're incredibly in the wrong. And so then it becomes this thing where in the video I made today with my story was where Asmongold was saying, look, when you, for example, when you let in all of these illegal people, and that's illegal, you didn't enforce the law when that was happening, but you want to enforce the law when such and such is going on? Like, we can talk about an eye for an eye makes the whole world blind, but the point is, how do you not see what's going on here? Your side of the fence did not follow the fucking law, and I'm sorry, but did not follow the law for a really long time, and you didn't follow the law 20 to 30 million times in the last 5 years with all the illegals that are here, and then you want your opposition to follow the law? Like, you're asking for something that's so incredibly ridiculous, you know?
Yeah.
And Asmongold made another good point in that same video that I just talked about, where he's saying, well, actually, maybe he didn't say this, but I'm going to say it. Look, when the world is this fucked, right? Like, you guys have done things, like, trying to undo all of this in any short amount of time is not going to be pretty, and it's probably not going to be quote-unquote legal. There's a difference between being morally legal, though, and being on paper legal, right? Like, some of our laws are stupid. Some of our current laws are unconstitutional. Just because a bunch of corrupt judges have said that it is constitutional doesn't mean that it really actually is. And I think there's quite a few examples of that. So that's the problem, is we live in a system where the people who are opposed to what's going on right now, 90% of the people who are opposed to 90% of the things, 90% of the time, the situation is they're incredibly confused about what's actually happening. And, you know, this is something that really needs to happen, and they think that it's the end of the world when that's not the case at all. So it's like, well,
yeah, but also,
go ahead.
Like, I would argue that if you know the rules of the game, you can't get mad if you get caught cheating. So just whether or not because the rules are right or wrong, morally or legally, right, whether they should be written that way, the fact of the matter is that it is. So we should first battle that before trying to...
If one team, let me ask you this. I realize what you're saying. If one team cheats for such a long time that they end up changing the rules of the game on paper, and they start manipulating those rules to the point to where if anyone wanted to play the game the way it was intended, they can no longer do that. And in order for them to get the game back to the rules that it was intended to be, which is absolutely necessary for us to live in a free and sovereign nation, like, it's impossible, right? So in order for them to... What I'm saying is it's impossible for us to play fairly and get the game back to where it needs to be, but you're insisting that we play fairly anyway, even though we kind of know that's not going to work. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah, yep. It's tough, because to make that sort of change, you have to have, you know, Congress, you have to have presidential approval, like, you have to have all these things. You can't just have, like, a 50% majority of, you know, like a popular vote of us voting Trump in, and then all of a sudden magically all of Trump's policies get to come into play. Like, there's going to be some things that have to go through all sorts of different branches. I don't know. I guess it's hard to answer that.
Well, then I'll tell you what needs to happen. Like, yeah, obviously this is an opinion, but when you look at really the reality of everything, I think it would be really hard to argue me here. is when you look at just how corrupt everything really is and how deep it really goes and how many people are actually involved. And when you look at how rigged the system has become, we no longer live in the same United States that the founding fathers founded. That we don't live in that same, and this goes back to that sentiment of, Democrats used to be like, fuck the system, it's rigged against us, and it needs to be completely undone and thrown away and redone. But the minute that starts happening, simply because it's happening over someone that they're brainwashed into thinking they don't like, all of a sudden it's a problem. Like, as soon as the system starts crashing and being undone and redone, they have an issue with it. And it's like, guys, the problem is so bad that we are going to have to be okay with the fact that on paper, we're breaking some rules here. And I'm not saying that means that we need to do things that are unjust and immoral, right? Like if that whole situation with the Palestine protester that got arrested and deported, just for protesting. Like, well, see, here's a great example. Like, I think we need to edit the First Amendment. Like, I don't think you should be here if you're not a citizen. Honestly,
but that's the thing, though. That's the whole argument. Oh shit. Well, the way that it's written is that you have to be and subject to our jurisdiction, which is in the implication that you are a citizen. So you don't have these rights unless you are subject to our laws and to our way of life. You can't just come over here on vacation and expect to get all the same rights as us.
I think there's a solid argument against that, and subject to just means that, like, you're here. Like, physically you're located here. Like, if I break a law here in America, that doesn't mean I broke a law in France, right? Like, I have to be in France and break a law in France to be punished for breaking a French law. If that makes sense.
So let me ask you this then. So if you're not subject to our jurisdiction, then if you break a law in America as a French citizen, should we even be allowed to try them in our courts then?
Yes. Yeah.
Or should we have to send them back to France?
So
because
if they're
that's
French,
the jurisdiction that they fall under.
If they're French and they break a U.S. law, but where are they when they do it?
They're in U.S.
Yeah, then they're subject to U.S. law.
They're subject to it.
Right, which means they have due process, and it means that if they broke a U.S. law, then the punishment for them would be the same for anyone who broke a U.S. law.
Okay,
so I get
for an example, let's look at El Chapo. He was in Mexico doing shit, but then he got sent to the United States and was tried over here in our laws. But none of the crimes ever happened in the U.S. It happened. Is it because maybe it was like federally or something?
Plenty of the crimes happened here.
I mean, yeah, but was he really physically here selling drugs? It was just goons.
Right, but that's when we get into racketeering, right? Like you need to be able to get in trouble legally for being the boss man behind the operation, which is why Young Thug got in trouble. Like whether he did or didn't murder anybody, that was one thing that he was I don't know what the fucking status of that case is, but that was one thing that he was getting tried on. But another thing he's getting tried on is who's the boss. Like if someone else is killing people and you ordered that hit, well, you need to be in trouble for ordering that hit. And that's the same thing. If Chapo is the one ordering people around to sell drugs, then he's just as much guilty, if not more.
In the U.S. and Mexico?
For all drug deals that happened in the U.S. But the way that
so
go ahead.
No, you finish that thought.
Well, the way that they normally classify that is RICO, or it's usually RICO or some kind of like cartel. They use the word cartel, something like that, organized crime.
Yeah.
So in this scenario where we have the Palestine protester, let's say we want to do something about it, okay? There's a couple of options. We try them in our courts and try to go against the whole fact that they don't have the freedom of speech. Therefore, we can take some action against them. So the options are, okay, do we try them, convict them, and imprison them here? Do we try them and send them back to their country for punishment, or do we just send them back to their country? Well, it seems like that you were advocating that the rules say we shouldn't be able to send him back to the country, but we're going to break some rules here. So we're gonna go ahead and do it anyways.
No, the rules, it's actually the opposite. The rules, as far as the Constitution goes, my understanding of it is that they have the right to be tried here in the United States. This is not exactly correct, but basically the same way that a U.S. citizen would be tried. They have a lot of the same rights. Once they're here, if they're here on U.S. soil, they have a lot of the same basic human rights, which is like the 10 commandments, like right to a jury by your peers, which just means regular citizens, right? Yada yada.
You mean the Bill of Rights, right?
What's that?
The 10 Commandments? We give them the 10 Commandments?
Oh, Bill of Rights. Yeah, sorry.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah, the Bill of Rights.
We'll call that one out.
So, but what I'm saying is, I'm not always sure that that's what we should be doing. Like, I think we need to figure something out about whether or not who actually has protected First Amendment free speech and who doesn't. I think we need to draw a line in the sand about that. I don't think that you should be able to come, especially illegal immigrants should not be allowed to should not have First Amendment protection. Absolutely not.
Definitely.
No. But they do.
So
The thing is they do.
And I don't know enough about the technicalities of it. Maybe it's already there to some degree, but when you have, say, a student visa or a work visa, there is some sort of clause in the contract, right, where if you break a certain level of law, maybe it's a misdemeanor, maybe it's a felony, right, then you are just immediately deported back. There is no sort of fair trial, right? Like, I mean, that's what we see in other countries.
No, absolutely. In other countries, is if you break a law there, and some of the laws aren't even that, some of the laws are just some regular ass laws. Like, they don't even really hurt anybody. And it's like, if you do it, they don't ask questions, brother. Like, get the fuck out of here.
So let's go back to the Palestine protester example, because I feel like that's a really good one.
Mm-hmm.
How they talked about too. What would you say we should do about that? And let's ignore the fact that they are perceived as a public terrorist. Let's just say, because they broke the law. Let's say that, we're trying to see if they went beyond their freedom of speech rights.
Right. And, they very well might not be a public terrorist, but go ahead, finish your question.
Yeah, what should we do with them? Right? So what is the course of action that you would like to see and what you think should happen?
Well, assuming this person never said anything about Hamas or Hezbollah, they never said death to America. If they didn't say any terrorist Muslim shit, if that really is true, then we shouldn't have arrested them in the first place. And it shouldn't be a question of what do we do with them. The question should be, the sentiment should be nothing happened at all, and we're not even talking about this because no one even went to jail.
Right. Well, then let's say that he did break a law, right? For the argument's sake, because where I'm getting at is not necessarily whether he's guilty or innocent.
Okay, but assuming they did some terrorist shit, even some minor, even if they spray painted.
Maybe not even a terror. Yeah, we're talking like stealing $5,000 of goods from Walmart.
Okay. Then at this point, well, with the state that we're currently in, right? Like, you take in the context of how many illegals we have here and how bad the problem is and how bad the economy is and how much we cannot afford that right now, even petty crime, I say right now, immediate deportation. We can relax that in the future and we can change that as the problem, becomes less of a problem as we start to solve the problem. But right now, get the fuck out, is my opinion.
Right. So if we wanted to, let's say that we wanted to have them punished. Maybe we deemed like, hey, you murdered somebody, right? So we want to ensure that you get punished. I don't want to send you back to this country that's going to accept you with open arms, like, great, death to America. Mm-hmm. Do we have the right to put them in our own imprisonment?
Yeah, but then we have to pay for them. So, then tax dollars are paying for them. Now, there's an argument like, well, I would want my tax dollars to be making sure that person is not free. Right? And I think now here's where the problem becomes like, okay, for example, if we deported him and we know for a fact that they're going to a country that isn't going to do anything about it, like that person's just going to remain free and maybe they're going to come right back and kill some more people, well, I would rather my tax dollars pay to keep that person in prison. Mm-hmm. So it's like, you know, it's just so much easier said than done. Like that's kind of self-evidently, obviously the right thing for us to do in that situation. But the problem is that's not always how it goes down, or like that's not always the situation. Like I'm sure there are examples of deportations that are not correct and should not have happened. And it's like, so did I answer your question?
Yeah, no, you did. So, and I'll give you my example, so it kind of comes full circle here too. Is that I believe that unless they are, say, labeled as a terrorist, right, or they are an existential threat, if we believe that sending them back to their country is going to be bad for us because they are a public enemy, I don't think that we have that right. I think that's where it comes back to not being under our jurisdiction. So we have full rights to be able to deport you without a second question, second look at it. But I don't believe that we have the right to send them to our prisons and keep them here, unless it's a prisoner of war. So it's kind of like the opposite side of like the Brittany Griner situation, where it's like, okay, I don't think that Russia necessarily has the right. Granted, under their laws they do, but if we were Russia's scenario, I don't think we have the right to keep her detained. I think that at most we can send her back to her own country, to where she does have jurisdiction.
Yeah, and they clearly did that for political gain. It really didn't have
Oh,
much
definitely.
to do with, like, it's not like she broke some heinous, you know, it's not like she committed some heinous crime. They were doing it to be petty and to have leverage.
Oh yeah.
Should have kept her there.
Well,
Saying she
but
hates
even-
America. Fuck out.
But I guess that
Wow.
also brings the question of like, if you murder an American as someone who's on a visa, how does that not make you a public enemy? You, by definition, murdering Americans. So
based
that
on what you said,
maybe
my
there's a lot
question-
more gray area there than I thought.
well, my
But
question to you is the person who killed Laken Riley, like,
Jesus.
you don't think we have the right to imprison that motherfucker right here in America?
It needs to be the death penalty.
Because I think we should be hanging that motherfucker in public in America, much more than
Firing
just prison.
squad. Firing squad.
You know, or can we get a wood chipper feet first on CNN is what I think we should do.
Yes.
yeah, maybe that's where I was kind of getting to the realization already. It's like, okay, how is murder not putting yourself in that bracket of unforgivable crimes that we have the right to enforce?
Right. And remember what I was saying earlier is not like for most of these issues, the question that I think everyone should be asking is this negatively affecting other people? And the second follow-up question to that is, how badly did it affect other people? Right? And murder is yes, and really, really badly. Right? Like really not okay. And so, I mean, I just don't, and I'm not saying you're making this argument, but anyone who would make the argument that we don't have the right to not only imprison the murderer of Laken Riley and deliver the death penalty right fucking here in America, I think is crazy. Like, that is absolutely a scenario we need to be implementing the death penalty right here in America to somebody who may or may not be from here. I don't fucking care. You kill somebody who is from here, then you can die here as well.
Yeah,
So what
let
are-
them in prison for 20, 30 years before we even attempt to do it. Which is fucking
Yeah,
dumb.
what I will say is with a lot of these like weird scenarios, the gray areas, I like to think about what would I think if the roles were reversed? Would it change my opinion on it? And to answer that, if we have an American citizen, if you, for example, go over to Pakistan and you murder 2 people, it's going to be hard for me to fight for you coming back, right? Like if you break the law over there to that degree, sorry, buddy.
Yeah, like if I went over there and, you know, especially because of like the poorness that a lot of them live in, and took advantage of some girl and did what that friggin' guy did to Laken Riley, and if I did the same exact thing, like this isn't about war, this isn't about me thinking somebody's a terrorist, this is just, I just saw an opportunity and took it, right? Then how does
Yeah.
anyone advocate for me not to go to prison in Pakistan?
But it's also very easy for us to both sit here and be like, okay, this is a gray area scenario. We have to think about it, and we use our morals and just our general life experiences. We can sit here and we can agree 100% that we're both on the same page here. I think. I don't think there's going to be any arguing. But how do you articulate that to someone who doesn't have the same upbringing? To like say someone who hasn't had, say, a religious foundation of morals that leads us to believe like, okay, there are some certain sins that are unforgivable. Maybe
think
not. Well, that's
think
definitely the wrong word.
the way you do
Back
that,
to that, but
I think a good way to do that is you get your homies together, right? And you get in Discord and you record the conversation and you play Rocket League while you talk about it. I think that's a really great way to introduce people to these topics that are hard to talk about. And not everyone is going to have the same perspective on them. And in fact, there's a lot of people who have such the opposite perspective that they think what we're saying right now is absolutely nuts. But this is why we're all here having this conversation, right? It's these things need to be talked about, and the fact, and like, because it's so censored and so suppressed all the damn time, and because people are living such strange lives with only one parent or a non-existent parent or a parent that thinks that when they were 5 years old, the child needed to be a transgender person, and now they're living a very strange and unfortunate life as an adult because of it, right?
Yeah.
These are the
Yep.
types of people that I hope get onto a Rocket League video hoping to see some clips, and really what they saw was us losing a bunch of games while talking about politics. We all ready to
And- Yeah.
grind?
All
All right,
right,
get
but
into ranked.
I got one more on it though.
All right, yeah.
It's the way I kind of look at it is I think that we have a good approach to it, is that it's sort of a non-judgment zone as far as like when we talk about these things, because the same way that I look at a left-leaning person that's protesting for Elon, thinking how in the hell can you be for that, right? Like how are you that against government accountability is the way I look at it. They're looking at us the same way with not allowing trans people into sports or their other policies. And if we just sit here and just the second someone opposes us, we're just like, oh, you're the scum of the earth. I can't believe you believe that. You're the worst. It happens both ways. I think it's just like, that's why you're not this way, but we just need more people like that aren't they're able to have a conversation and not a screaming match.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
That way you can actually articulate points and not just yell.
Yeah. And that's like, we can get heated, and every now and then I'll toss out an insult to a certain group of people every now, but I try really hard not to, and I try just to talk about facts. I've been really about the facts recently, right? And the facts are, in relation to what you just said, is that there's women with their faces getting beat in, right? So like, you can, and to your point, like, this is how like, these are the pictures we need to show these people. And if they want to argue with us and be like, oh, well, that's less than 1% of the time, my argument to that is one is too many. Don't you agree? Do you care about women's rights, or do you not? Do you think a woman has the right to get punched in the face by a biological male? I feel like maybe that needs to be talked about.
But I think what happens is we've so hyper like politicized it and emotionalized it that you start putting the mic in front of a 16-year-old that has that opinion that they should. The second you say that you disagree with them, they clam up. They get so emotional that they can't articulate anything, and then they just start saying things that maybe I don't think they actually believe in their heart.
They grandstand. Yeah, and that's why, like, I go back to, did Martin Luther King yell an insult and from the mic, right? And so the thing is, and this is what Jesus taught too, is it's like, people are going to act how they act. The way that we have to treat them is we cannot, we can't meet them with more fire like that. We have to, we have to be the ones that stay calm. We have to be the adults in the room. I mean, I think that kind of sums it up. Like, and are we going to have to sit here and deal with a lot of whining and crying while these people figure it out? Well, yeah. But, I think we're now living in a world where they're being primed for that, where as these things change and as they see the world change and as they realize, as all of these kids grow up, who, had parents who forced a certain thing on them, as that story gets out and louder about how unfortunate that shit really is, society will change. People will change their mind, and these very confused folk will, right? Soft times have created soft men. And we're coming up on some hard times, and it's going to create some hard men. We're just going to have to be patient.